Hey guys, Elias here. In today's video, I'm gonna talk about something a little bit unusual, but very fun nonetheless, which is how wealthy every single Genshin Impact character truly is, starting with Amber. Particular character, in my opinion, is quite influential, but not very wealthy in terms of materialistic positions, as she is an officer of the law, which means she has a lot of power that she could exercise to gain money by extortion or by taking bribes. But Amber is probably like 15, which means she can't do that legally. So for that reason, I'll put her about working class for now. We'll see how it goes from that. Now, Albedo. Albedo is an alchemist, which means that he has quite a stronghold on every single industry where there's making of specific materials or alchemy gadgets, as he is the leading alchemist in the entire region, and most likely the entire Teyant for that matter, which means that he has quite a lot of customers. So his cash flow is quite stable, I would say. So for that reason, I want to put him in an upper class, but at the same reason as Amber, I think he spends most of his money on research. So he doesn't have a lot of immediate wealth that he could expand when needed. So for that reason, I think I stick him in a middle class. Now, Aloy. Aloy is a hunter that was isekai into this world, which means that she most likely doesn't even know how money works here. Probably can't even speak our language for that matter. Which means that she probably will struggle to amass any amount of wealth, but at the same time, a hunter-like skills will probably land her at least one job in like hunter's wheel or something, like hunting wild boars or squirrels or whatever she can. So for that reason, I think she would be at about below Amber in the working class. Now, Ito. Ito has a gang, which means that he's acquainted with the underworld of Genshin Impact. Now, for some of you, it might seem like it's filthy rich or upper class territory. However, Ito doesn't actually do any illegal activities that we know of, which means that he doesn't have a lot of wealth because his gang is pretty much just troublemakers all around for now that we know of. However, at the same time, he might have some shady connections going on, which means that he could have like a hidden Swiss bank account somewhere in Teyant that we just don't know yet about, like in Fontaine or something. So for that reason, I think I stick him about upper class for now, just for the possibility of Ito having an immense amount of wealth hidden somewhere for a black day when he needs it. Now, Barbara is a priest, which means that she doesn't have a lot of money because she most likely just spends it all for praying and to buy like cleaning equipment and whatnot for church. But at the same time, she has a massive army of simps ready to throw money at her at every single turn, as she's an idol, which means that technically she probably has quite a lot of wealth. Plus, her sister is a high-ranking official, which means that she probably has a lot of influence as well to get money that way. So for that reason, I think I stick her at about bottom of an upper class tier because she probably just can gain money from donations and stuff and just put it in her own pocket. So for that reason, I'll put her right there. Now, Beidou. Beidou is a pirate, which means that she can plunder and steal from other people. She also has a massive ship and a crew, which leads her an immense amount of wealth because ships are expensive, and in order to afford one, you need to be quite wealthy. So for that reason, I'll stick her at the top of an upper class tier. Now, Bennett probably doesn't have any Mora because even if he did, he would probably lose it. So for that reason, I'll put him at dirt poor tier just because his curse just doesn't allow him to be happy in life. And any materialistic possessions that he might have would probably burn at the single touch of him. So I'll put him there right now. Now, Chong Yun. He's an exorcist, which means that he has a job, so he's at least in the working class tier. Yet, at the same time, exorcism is not that popular, which means that he probably doesn't have a lot of work going on, as he might be a swindler. We don't know yet. We only saw him perform exorcism once and it wasn't that successful, to be honest. So for that reason, I think I stick him in the middle of a working class tier. Although he does have a pretty influential aunt, which means that she might help him out. So maybe I'll put him at the top of a working class tier for now. Now Dilek. Dilek has a stranglehold on pretty much every single winery business in existence of Teyat, which means that he probably is extremely wealthy, as alcohol is quite a lucrative business and he is pretty much a king of it. So for that reason, I'll put him at the filthy rich tier. Now Diona is a bartender, but unlike Dilek, she doesn't actually make her own booze, which means that she doesn't have a lot of money. She just works as a bartender, but at the same time she might have a lot of connections going on, which means that she might have quite influential customers that she could rely on to give her business. And for that reason, I think I'll put her at the top of a middle class tier for now. Now, Eula. Eula is an ability, which means that she has an immense amount of wealth. However, she is kinda disowned by her own family for being a good person, pretty much. Which means that she doesn't have a lot of money. As she's working, and the ability doesn't work pretty much, they just gain money from like taxes and stuff. So for that reason, she probably doesn't have a lot of money. However, just for the idea of her having noble connections, I think I would put her at the bottom of an upper class tier, just because she has quite high social status, which could amount quite a lot of wealth in the future. Now Fischl. Fischl claims to be some sort of princess for God knows what country, but in reality she just hangs out with a bird by the name of Oz, and she doesn't really do much else except being like a detective, which means that she has work, but at the same time she doesn't really do much else or shows her wealth in any single way possible. So for that reason, I think I stick her at the bottom of a middle class tier, just because she hasn't shown how much actual wealth she possesses. But in the future she might be in the filthy rich territory if she discovers what her country is finally and let us know about it. Now Ganyu. I'm pretty sure Ganyu doesn't even know what Mora is at this point. He probably just thinks of it as some sort of accessory. But at the same time, she does have quite a high ranking position within Liyue, as one of the helpers for Ningguang, which means that she has quite a lot of money to spend. And most likely all of it she spends on books on how to be human. So for that reason, she probably doesn't have a lot of left, but she still works a lot, so I'll put her at the top of a middle class tier. Now Gore. Gore is a general, which means that he amasses a lot of military power. However, generals don't get paid that much, which means actual monetary possessions he might not have many. But he could just go and plunder other people, like insinuate a war or something, and just take from others. But he wouldn't do that because he's a good boy. So for that reason, he's a hardworking man who is a good person. So for that reason, I think I put him at the top of a middle class tier, just because he's a good general boy. Now Hutao. Hutao is a mortician and an owner of a mortician industry within Liyue, which means that she has pretty much a monopoly, just like Dilek. But unlike Dilek, morticianry is not a very lucrative business. Now she might have a lot of customers, as she pretty much the only establishment for burying people. So for that reason, I think I put her at the top of an upper class tier, just because she probably can amass a lot of wealth, but it's kind of situational depending on how many people she has to bury every single day. So it could be millions or more, so it could be none. So for that reason, just for the insinuation of her wealth, I think I'll put her at the top of an upper class tier for now. Jean is an active Grandmaster of Knights of Favonius, which means that she has a lot of military power just like Gore. But she pretty much only works and doesn't do anything else, which means that she probably doesn't care about money or doesn't have any, because she probably just doesn't pay herself at all. So for that reason, I think I put her at the top of working class tier, because she's a workaholic and she needs to work on it and enjoy life for once in a while. Now, Kazuha. Kazuha is a vagrant, which means that he doesn't have any money. But at the same time, he kinda got a job with Albedo. So for that reason, I think I stick him at the bottom of a working class, because he doesn't have a stable job, which means he doesn't have a stable income. So yeah, for that reason, working class. Now, Kaya is a forgotten prince and also a high-ranking official within Knights of Favonius, which means that he probably has a lot of money amassed just because of how slippery he is. He probably has, just like Ito, some Swiss bank account, maybe even two, where he has billions or more stored just for the day when he can reclaim his throne and build his own country once again, for which reason I put him at the top of an upper class tier. Now, Ayaka. Ayaka, just like Eula, is a nobility, but unlike Eula, Ayaka actually has a liking of her own family, which means that she has a lot of money to play around with. So I'll put her at filthy rich tier, because nobility are pretty wealthy, from what I know. Now, Keqing. Keqing is another high-ranking individual, just like Ganyu. She has a high-ranking position, but unlike Ganyu, she actually knows what money is and how to spend it. So for that reason, I'll put her above Ganyu. So there's that. At the same time, she probably spends a lot of money on her cosplays, which are quite pricey from what I know, so I'll probably put her actually below Ganyu, in the middle of a middle class tier. That should do. Now, Klee is a child, but she's a child that can pretty much make her own explosives, which means that she needs to get somewhere the materials to make them. And if she tries to sell them, she probably can amass quite a lot of money, because explosives, once again, extremely expensive. So for that reason, I'll put her probably a little bit above Albedo, just because she probably can amass a lot of wealth, but at the same time she probably just was spending all on candy, just like any child would do. So I'll probably would push her at about middle of a working class tier. Now, Cujo Sarah is a military advisor and pretty much the right hand of Raiden Shogun, which means she has a lot of money to play around with, because Raiden doesn't really do her job, which means Cujo Sarah is pretty much governing the entire country. And for that reason, I'll put her at pretty much top of an upper class tier, just because she pretty much can swindle Raiden Shogun of all her money and she probably wouldn't even notice. Now, Lisa. Lisa is a librarian, which means that she just does working class job, but at the same time, Lisa probably swindles a lot of travelers out of their money with her seductive looks. So for that reason, she probably is at the bottom of an upper class tier, because I'm pretty sure she swindles thousands of travelers at this point and probably amassed enough wealth to build her own mansion at this point. Now, Traveler, also known as Aether. Now, Aether can have any amount of money, to be honest, from filthy rich to dirt poor, just depends on how he feels. But at the same time, he does have power of friendship and his own harem by his side, which means that everybody's wealth is his wealth. But for the sake of this tier list, we're gonna just look at individual wealth, in which case he just helps people, which means that he gains money from actual work, and it's situational, so he's self-employed, which means that he could gain anywhere from millions or more to nothing at all, for which reason I'll put him at the top of a working class tier for now. Now, Lumine, unlike her brother, doesn't actually have a harem, but she does have power of friendship, for which reason I'll put her below her brother, because she probably doesn't amass as much wealth as her brother would, because of power of harem, which is a quite high ranking power to have, and it could lend you anything you really want. So yeah, for that reason, we're gonna stick to that. Now, Mona. Mona pretty much doesn't have any money because she refuses to work or as an astrologist, which is her occupation, because she firmly believes that being poor is better than actually having any money, and her convictions are extremely important to her, for which reason I'll put her at the top of a dirt poor tier, because at least she has something going on for her. No any money though, so there's that. Now Ningguang. Ningguang is pretty much a governor of the entire country by the name of Leeway, and she's also an individual who actually prints money, because entire stock of Mora is pretty much printed within Leeway, and as her governor, she pretty much has an unlimited supply of Mora, for which reason she pretty much just has the entire wealth of Tead at her fingertips at any given moment, for which reason she goes at the top of a filthy rich tier. Now Noelle. Noelle is a maid, which means that she just works hard, and she's also and kind of tries to become a Knight of Favonius, which means that she doesn't actually have a stable job at the moment. She just works as a helper in a way. So for that reason, I'll push her at the middle of a working class here, probably below Amber, because unlike Amber, who has a full-time job, she just pretty much just works part-time. So for that reason, we're gonna stick her there. Now Chi-Chi is a pharmacist, but at the same time she's a zombie, which means that she doesn't understand how money works. All she wants is her cocoa milk. So for that reason, she probably will spend her entire money, her entire pocket money on it. So for that reason, she probably broke most of the time. But at least unlike Bennett, she probably has at least some money. So for that reason, stick her in the middle of the dirt pot here. Now, Raiden Shogun. Raiden Shogun is a governor of the entire country, just like Ningguang. But unlike Ningguang, she actually just locks herself in her mind. So she's pretty much a glorified incel that doesn't go out much, and she probably would just spend all her money on Dunga milk anyway. So for that reason, she doesn't really have any wealth going on for herself, and she pretty much just runs AI to do all the work for her. So for that reason, I'll put her at the dirt poor tier because all the reason mentioned above. But I'll put her at the top of the dirt poor tier because unlike these three, at least she has potential money, but she probably doesn't know how to use it either. Now Razor. Razor is a wolf boy, which means that he was grown in the wild, which means he probably never seen more rain in his entire life, for which reason he goes squarely into dirt poor tier. But at least unlike Bennett, if he had money, he could probably at least put it in his pocket before it burns to a crisp. So for that reason, he goes a little bit above Bennett. Now Rosario. Rosario is a priest as well as a vampire, and from my knowledge, vampires have a lot of wealth going on for them. Now we don't see their wealth in Rosario, but I'm pretty sure she has hidden stash of some gold, some maybe silverware that she just keeps for rainy day whenever she decides to quit being a priest and follow her true passion of just being a full-time tsundere. So for that reason, I'll put her at about top of her middle class. Now Kokomi. Kokomi governs part of Raiden Shogun's domain, which means that she has a little bit of wealth going on for her. But at the same time, she sleeps for about 80% of the time as she's a narcoleptic one. So that leads me to a point of that she most likely would be in about upper class still, because unlike Raiden Shogun, she at least governs her own territory and she probably does her own finances. So for that reason, I think I stick her probably a little bit below Cujo Sarah. Now Sayu. Sayu is a ninja that, just like Kokomi, pretty much just sleeps all the time, which means that she doesn't care about wealth. All she cares about is growing taller, which is understandable, but at the same time, she probably has wages going on from Ayato. She is being employed directly by him. She also can steal money as she's a ninja and nobody would ever notice it. So for that reason, I think I stick her at the middle of a working class. Now Shanta. Shanghai pretty much was a hermit for most of her life. She probably doesn't even need money, but at the same time she was reinvented within society, which means that she started working as an actress just like Chongyun. But unlike Chongyun, she's actually half god, which means that she probably could find a stable job that would pay much more than Chongyun's. And for that reason, I'll put her at the bottom of a middle class tier. Now, Sucrose. Sucrose is pretty much a helper for Albedo, which means that she probably gives all of her money to Albedo because she's a massive simp for him and she would never reject his orders, which means that she probably doesn't have any money to play with, but she does have work, which means I'll put her above Aloy and Kazuha for that reason. Now, Tartaglia, or Child. Now, Child has a low wealth, but it's not his wealth necessarily, it's his employees' wealth that he can just swindle away and give to other people like Zhongli. Now, for that reason, I think he's in a middle class tier, but at the same time, he does give away money like candy, for which reason I'll put him in the middle of an upper class tier, just because he has a lot of connections going on and he's pretty much a mafia boss, which means that he can get money in a variety of ways if he really wanted to. Now, Toma. Toma spends most of his time flirting with women, which means that he doesn't actually have a lot of time to work. But at the same time, he's a right hand of Ayato, who's in ability, which means that he has pretty high wages. And for that reason, I think I'll stick him at the top of a middle class tier, because Ayato would probably just give him a lot of pocket money even if he doesn't do work. Now, Venti. Venti is God, but unlike Radiant Shogun, he doesn't actually govern his territory at all, or even present within it, which is similar to Radiant Shogun, but at the same time, he doesn't actually do anything at all. Radiant Shogun is at least present there, so she can at least know what's going on within her territory. I'm pretty sure Venti just drinks himself to half sleep and plays music for most of his day, and that's his work pretty much. But at the same time, boss don't really earn that much, and they probably broke most of the time, for which reason I'll probably put him at a dirt poor tier. Now, Zhang Ling is a chef, which means that she has a job, and it probably pays quite stably. But at the same time, she probably travels a lot, and she's a child, which means that she can't actually withhold a proper job yet. But she does have Goba, and Goba is a god, which means that people would just throw money at her just for being with God, as a donation of sorts. So for that reason, I think I stick her in a probably a little bit above Shanghai as a middle class, just because Goba is always present with her, and Goba would be in the filthy rich tier as we all know it, but Zhang by herself I think is probably a little bit of a bottom middle class tier. Now, Xiao. Xiao is a conqueror of demons, which means that his job is pretty much just being a Superman of sorts, but a much darker one and a much edgy one. But that's not really a stable job as nobody pays for it, because he has to rely on kindness of other people to actually give him food and shelter. And for that reason, he goes squarely into bottom of an F tier, also known as dirt poor tier, but still above Bennett because, at least unlike Bennett, he doesn't have bad luck on his side. Now, Ching Cho. Ching Cho is a book writer, which means that he has a lot of wealth going on for him, as well as one of the inheritors for a massive trading company, which means that he's a future Jeff Bezos. So for that reason, his promise of wealth is quite extraordinary, so I'll put him in a filthy rich territory for now. Now, Xinyan. Xinyan is a traveling music artist, and as we all know it, freelance music doesn't pay much, so she probably has to play on the streets and just pray that people buy her albums. So she probably doesn't have a lot of money going on in her pocket, but she does it for the love of game, not for money. But she's still pretty broke most of the time, so I think I'll put her above Razor, at least. Because unlike those three, at least she does something that is worth money, potentially. Now, Yaemiko. Yaemiko is also a book author just like Ching Cho, but unlike Ching Cho, she doesn't have a massive corporation behind her back, but she is a priestess, and she's also a close friend with the ruler of one of the continents, Raging Shogun, which gives her a lot of wealth to play with. So I think I'll put her at the top of an upper class tier, just because her books are selling pretty well. Now, Yanfei. Yanfei is a lawyer, which means she earns extraordinary amounts of money from her clients just for her services, as being the best and probably the only lawyer available in the entire tier, for which reason I think I'll put her at the bottom of the filthy rich tier. Now, Yoimiya. Yoimiya is a fireworks provider, which means that she earns a lot of money because fireworks are expensive to make, and she pretty much just supplies every single person with them, as there's no another fireworks maker in the entire tier most likely. But she also spends a lot of time just playing with children, which means she doesn't have a lot of time to make money, unlike her father does. So for that reason, I think I still would stick her at an upper class tier, but probably a little bit on the lower side, like right above Beta. As she probably would realize in the future that she's in a quite lucrative business and realize her full potential and unleash it in a commercial sense in a full. Now, Yunjin. Yunjin is an opera singer, but at the same time she also possesses an extreme amount of wealth, as she comes from a wealthy family, which means that she doesn't actually have to work to be an upper class, but she does work, which brings her even more value to the table. And for that reason, I think I'll stick her probably a little bit above Barbara, because unlike others in this tier, she mostly does just sing for the love of it, not for the money, which means she wouldn't make a lot of money from her own work, but she does have a wealth already being born into. Next, Zhongli. Now, Zhongli is a special case because if we talk about Zhongli before he lost his noses, he's pretty much a big daddy. He's the one that makes money, so he would be in a filthy rich territory. However, if we talk about current Zhongli, he pretty much doesn't have any money, but he does have work. He works for funeral parlor, so Hu Tao is his boss. But at the same time, he shows that he never has any money. So for that reason, I think I still would stick him probably at about top of the dirt poor tier, just because he never shows a single moron on him, despite being called Morax. So that's that. Now, Ayato. Ayato is an ability, as well as Ayaka, but unlike Ayaka, he actually governs his own noble clan, which means that he has even more money than Ayaka, and for that reason I'll put him at about top 3 of filthy rich tier. Now next, Kuki Shinobu. Kuki Shinobu is pretty much a right-hand woman for Arataki Ito, and she most likely governs all finances by herself, because Ito most likely doesn't have enough time to do it, and he probably doesn't want to be honest. So for that reason, I think I'll put her above Ito, just because she probably is the actual accountant for the Arataki gang, and she probably governs all the money within Ito's shady bank accounts. So she probably knows all the passwords, and she can get it if she really wanted to. Now, Yellen. Yellen is an interrogator, which means that she could gain wealth in a variety of ways. At the same time, people would probably pay heaps of money for her to step on them. I know a lot of you would. So for that reason, I think she's in an upper class tier, but she wouldn't be at the top of an upper class tier. I think she would be probably above Xiao, right in the middle. Now, Hazel. Hazel is a detective, just like Fischl, but unlike Fischl, he actually has a quite high social ranking, which means that he has a lot of clout going on. And cloud is important as it can bring you work and it could generate money in a sense, as he will gain more work unlike Fischl. And for that reason, I think I stick him right above Fischl in the middle class territory. Now Tanari. Tanari is a scholar as well as a forest ranger, which means that he has double jobs, and that's an extremely hardworking man. And scholars usually not get paid much, but at the same time he's one of the best scholars, which means that he might win like a Nobel Prize or something of TEAT equivalent. And for that reason, I think he'd probably still be in the upper class tier, just because he probably has a lot of money to throw around from research purposes that he doesn't do, unlike Albedo. So for that reason, I think he's probably at the bottom of the upper class tier. Now Colley. Colley is a ranger, just like Tanari, but unlike Tanari, she doesn't have a lot of cloud going on. So for that reason, I think I'll put her in a working class just because she actually has a job, unlike a lot of these people. So for that reason, I think she probably would be above Chongyun, because her job is at least quite stable and she earns probably quite hefty amount for being a forest ranger within Sumeru. Now next is Dory. And Dory is pretty much a sultan of sorts, as she has her own palace and she probably one of the wealthiest individuals within the entire TEAT. And for that reason, I think she probably goes right here in the top 3. She probably has enough wealth to overthrow pretty much everybody below her. She probably even has enough wealth to overthrow Dilek, which I think is the case, because Dilek has one empire, but he doesn't really do much else. And Dory is an overall merchant, and she also has her own palace, but Dilek doesn't have it, at least not yet. Maybe he's planning it and thinking about building his own like Batcave. So for that reason, he goes as a second place of a filthy rich here, because unlike Ningguang, she can't print her own money. If she could, she probably would. Now, Candice. Candice is a guardian, which means that she works hard and she doesn't earn a lot of money, because the only thing that she cares in her life is protecting others, which is a noble case, but at the same time nobility only pays if you actually have noble connections and blood, and noble intentions are just admirable. So for that reason, I think she's in the working class, but she probably a little bit above Colley because she has a little bit of a high social status, but not as high as Jean. So for that reason, she probably will be 4th in working class tier. Now Sina. Sina is a law officer, also known as Mahamatra. So he pretty much has a stranglehold on the entire Sumeru, as he pretty much can just enforce law and take money from others just in the name of law, which a lot of law officials unfortunately do. So for that reason, he probably would be in upper class, as law pays and pays a lot. And for that reason, I think he probably would be at the top of an upper class, just because of a possibility that he has within his grasp. He probably wouldn't do it, but for the possibility, I think. Well, you know what? Let's put him at the 3rd place, just because we didn't see him do it. But the possibility is on the table. And he probably has a lot of resources to work with as a law official. And last but not least, Nilo. Now, Nilo is a dancer, which means that she's an entertainer that would probably earn quite a bit of money, because entertainers are paid quite well. So she's a little bit like of an idol, just like Barbara. But unlike Barbara, she actually has a likable personality and skills to back her role up. So for that reason, I think I'll put her above Barbara for now in an upper class tier. So I think this should do it. In surprise to nobody, Ningguang is 1st place and Bennett is the last place. And I think this is overall my tier list. So make sure to let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my choices. I was light. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye bye.